Hello and welcome to Exchanges for another week. Leadership in a leadership vacuum period. How do we deal with it? What do we need to have in terms of value, in terms of our ethics, in terms of our empathy, to actually make decisions that are good for the whole, not just for the sum? Because that's the real question, and that's why I've brought in an absolute expert in this space in Amanda Rose. She is the most prominent person out there at the moment, as far as I can see, really advocating for this question. Where does leadership come from? What does leadership need to do, particularly in this country, to actually make change stick? Because that is the real question. Before we get into the exchange with Amanda, this episode is brought to you by Moorr, the lifestyle by design app designed to follow all of your property investment needs, making sure that you get the lifestyle by design that you want. That's moorr.com.au. That's moorr.com.au. But now, here's Amanda Rose. Amanda Rose, welcome to Exchanges. I've been really looking forward to this because you have been very prominent in your views around leadership. And part of why I wanted to get you on is to have that very big discussion about what leadership actually is in not just 2026, but into the future. We hear so many different opinions about it, who sits where that sits in, institutions, business, small business, and even at the sole trader level. So welcome. Take me through how you're seeing leadership at this point in the cycle.
Oh, look, I think people desire to lead because they like the power that comes with it and the opportunity and the rubbing shoulders with the elite and the fancy, but no one wants to make the sacrifices and the hard choices required to be a leader. And to be a good quality leader, you need to have vision, you need to have empathy, you need to not discriminate, you need to think of everyone, not just one particular group or favor any particular group. You shouldn't be, different political groups do this where they're lobbied by a particular, group in society, so they favor them. That's not leadership. Leadership is how can everyone thrive under me in some capacity? How can I help everyone live a good quality life and be fair instead of I just want the title. I will do what I need to do to remain in power and to remain elected, which is what happens in politics. Because people have forgotten in Australia, MPs are elected by the people to represent the people. I would like to see, you know what? Some have, and when they do, they get penalised. They get penalised by their own party. How dare you go against what we've told you to push? It's like literally, here is your talking points. Go out and push that to your community. That's what you stand for. Instead of, hi, my community is different and this is what they need. They're struggling or they need representation. And then you go to the top and it's like, well, how can we make sure everyone is working together and then everyone is heard? That's not happening.
That is, I absolutely completely agree with all of what you've just said. Like the whole concept of leadership, and particularly, let's stay on the politics side, MPs, as you said, they're elected representatives of a community, of a society, of whatever, state, federal, local area that they are voted into. That has clearly been forgotten. There's a lot of noise around that growing from ex and old politicians across the world. The one that catches my attention lately is Sir John Major out of the UK, obviously the Prime Minister in the early 90s. But he basically represents what you said just then, which is at the moment the leadership isn't there from all persuasions. So is this the rise of technology? And everybody fingers social media for this as well. Why have we now got, it's not like it's referred to as careerist politicians. I'd actually argue it's more than that. I'd actually argue it's those that play the game better than anything else. And therefore it's not about leadership. It's about the gaming of your career.
It is, but the thing is, they're not playing a fair game, right? So it's okay if you all go in with the same rules. You're playing a board game, you play Monopoly, and everyone's got the same rules. But it's not fair if someone in that game has more money. The bank's given them more money than someone else, so they got a heads up or they're connected, and it's just not fair, right? And I think a desire for also money. I think people's obsession with greed has taken over this world, let alone the country. So people is, I want my money and I'm going to protect my money. And you see that more, that the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And it's like, too bad, you missed out, you missed the boat, you just got to suck it up and live the way you should be living. You should know everyone should have the opportunity that if you work hard, you get rewarded for working hard. And that is what a leader should do. Even in the employment space, it's the same. But the thing is, you can see the shift online. People are speaking out more. People are calling it out more. And I love the millennials and the Gen Zs for calling out injustices. Whether you agree with what they're calling out or not, they're calling out, hang on a minute, 2 and 2 doesn't add 5, what's going on here? And good on them. But also means that's why we have more independence. That's why all these parties are being established, smaller parties, and people are flocking. So it's real fractured and splintered of what people are going for. But then there's the danger of that new independent MP or that new smaller party. Are they just replicating the same formula as the major parties and just want the power and the opportunity and the money? So I'd love to see someone risk their career, risk their political career to say, this is the right thing to do. This is what needs to happen. And unfortunately, in today's world, people get assassinated for doing that. Over the hundreds of years, you can see that. But this is the reality. You shouldn't be in a role like that if you're not willing to say, actually, I don't mind being hated for doing what's right for the people, to make sure everyone is living a decent life.
I'm going to come back to that point you just said about being hated, because I know at the moment you're experiencing some of that yourself. But I just want to highlight something you've just said there around, the leader that's putting the risk out there. I would point to someone like Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. He's clearly doing that. I would somewhat suggest that someone like Volodymyr Zelensky is obviously clearly put his hand up and done that, and look at where that's ended up with the Ukraine. How do we actually get that leader? How do we actually get somebody that is willing to risk? And let's also be honest, it's not just their career, it is the party that they represent's career and the MPs that sit on the crossbench. What do you think it's going to take to actually take away from the political / monetary incentive that comes with keeping quiet to actually lead for the better of not just the constituency, but for the country as a whole?
A revolution.
Yeah.
And because I don't want to say it's never going to change and there's, you're all hopeless and there's hopelessness, and I don't want to give off those vibes. But the reality is, I've been around politicians for so long that only a handful care, but I've seen them go into their parties, into the machine, and completely change. They spend all their time trying to get reelected. They spend all their time trying to do the right thing, but then get told by the multiple visits to their office, you can't say that, you can't do that, this is what the party wants, or this is what the lobby groups want, or, I got you when I funded your campaign, you've got to change this legislation for this company to make, to get contracts. So it's all messy. So I'm not sure we're going to get an actual leader that is going to do that. I think what we need to see is industry, business, the community. I think we need to lead from below. It's like in an organization, you can lead up. I think there needs to be a groundswell, which is happening, of people saying, I don't like that. I don't want that. And I think the fracturing of the political parties is a good thing. I think we need to see an election where it's 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. Of all these different parties, to shock everyone, to realize it's not working anymore. What has worked before is no longer working. And over time, we might actually, for example, say the Liberal Party, right? That needs to be gutted like a fish, right? So they actually need to bring in the people that think they're better and running it the right way. And, they sabotage each other constantly. I think all of them need to go, and they should start again with people that actually don't need the money, don't need to be accepted by corporate Australia, don't need to be accepted by lobby groups to say, no, this is what needs to happen in the country. So, and it doesn't matter which party it is, but we need to just completely reset.
So I want to go back then to what you said before about the hate side of it, because clearly this is the other rise, is that grievance is now an absolute fuel for this kind of ability, and grievance leads to teaming, as I call it, which is, them versus us, and therefore it leads to, incredible hate. First and foremost, Can you take us through what's happened to yourself over particularly the last 6 months with some of your political leadership and how you deal with it and the leadership you show behind it, but also how do we break the grievance hate cycle to actually
I call it
show
tribalism.
Tribalism, all of that kind of stuff.
And the thing is, so I've had hate my whole life in different areas, in different scenarios. It's because I won't budge from what I stand for in my value system. And I advocate that no one should. I don't care that it's a complete opposite to what I believe. Great, right? But don't budge from that. Don't change your mind because the wave of popularity says you should, or because money is an incentive, or opportunity is an incentive. It's actually, no, I don't agree with that behavior, so I'm going to stand up for it. I'm an advocate for defending and advocating for orphans, for children, for injustice, for Western Sydney, for different areas. I'm like, no, actually, that's wrong. Doesn't matter who's doing it. Wrong is wrong. And what happens is that what I call the propaganda machine is you need to take a side. What side are you on? Whose side are you on? So if you're on the left, you hate the right. If you're on the right, you hate the left. When you go, no, I shouldn't take a side of a country, a religion, or anything like that. What I should be saying is, I don't think that behavior or that activity is the right thing to do. So I'm against it regardless of who's doing it. And I think if people started to realize that the top literally leverage that propaganda, they deliberately create division so they can control you, right? And all of them do it, the top, in their own way. It's like, if we divide you, you won't unify. You won't work together. You won't support each other. When you think if there's 5% of the people in this world are controlling 95% of the world, which is insane. It's insanity. And we allow it if we hate on someone because they said what I don't like. And there's not much critical thinking involved either. I get abused and death threats and all these, people come to me and I'm like, why are you doing that on behalf of someone or behalf of a country or behalf of a political party or a group that don't care about you, right? You're literally hating on another stranger because you think you should, because you've been convinced that a person of a different skin color or a different religion is your enemy. Instead of looking at, hang on a minute, if I don't like the way the country is working, what are the problems? What, like our justice system? Why are people being let out on bail after the third, fourth attempt and then killing people? Or why is it that people are the homelessness has gone up and small businesses are closing down? Start looking at the policies of why is this happening? Why isn't anything changing there?
So then you talked about before about bottom-up leadership. So obviously, particularly, organisation, it's always about pushing back up towards the top end. What at a society level pushes that up? Like, because again, you just alluded to exactly that point. People clearly are taking tribalism, taking sides. They're seeing that as a way of, inverted commas, pushing up to leadership. But it's not clearly. It is, again, around a distortion of view. It's a distortion of how their worldview should be all worldview.
Yeah.
What does the collective society need to do to push up, but also push back against tribalism?
Don't get emotional, right? Even so, look at the take a clinical approach of, hang on a minute, that's wrong, and you're going to have to be empathetic at the same time, because emotion and empathy is two different things. Emotional is when you're out of control, you can't control your emotions, you're screaming, you're being manipulated, flattered, or you're attacking someone. Empathy is, I can actually empathize with my opposition. I can empathize that I don't like that group over there being hurt or that group being discriminated against. It doesn't have to be my group only should be the one that's heard. It should be no one should be discriminated against. So it's more like getting those small micro groups working together and saying, actually, we're all being abused, used, discriminated against. We should all be working together because we can't pay our rent, we can't pay our bills. So taking more of a practical approach of, we as a community don't like these policies and for this reason, right? And some can go too extreme, which is a result of policy that's too extreme already. And I'll give you an example of taxing gas companies, right? So, there's a big push now that they should be paying tax. Same with the tobacco, right? So it's like tobacco had like 70% tax on cigarettes, and then the illegal tobacco came up because people were paying $11, $15 instead. And the government's like, oh, hang on a minute, there's our income. So what we'll do is we get people to turn on people that are buying those ones or buying cigarettes in general, and we'll try and divide everyone. When the reality is the tax was too high to begin with. The gas companies did get away and have gotten away with too much, but so have the tech companies. So have a lot of large companies use the loopholes, the tax loopholes, and everything that they can do, rightfully so, if it's legal, to not pay it. But small businesses are paying it. You know, the individuals are paying it. So that double standard, people are sick of, and they've gotten away with it for too long. And it's not just Labor. Liberals were very good at, in bed with the big companies. That's just politics, right? That needs to stop.
Yeah. The question then goes to the leadership side of that is that let's take a sort of a hypothetical. Let's say there was a higher tax on gas, that the petroleum resource rent tax was actually collecting what it should have. The mineral tax that was obviously abolished originally back in the day stayed intact. What would you have liked to see from leadership to actually do with that money? Because the other catch is at the moment is the other way you create tribalism is who you give benefits to and who you spend on and who you don't spend on.
Yep.
And so my question comes when we start talking about this kind of concept is, where was the leadership to actually go, okay, we're going to take it out of the political side and put it into a technocratical side to use this money? How do we go down that path? We look at a Norwegian style sovereign wealth fund. You look at what the Canadians are now doing with a sovereign wealth fund. Do we have the leadership to actually go through that policy movement to get it out of the politics and move it into the technical?
Look, I don't think we do. The saying of the quickest way to make money is to stop spending it, right? Yep. And that's the small business mantra, stop spending the money. So on the flip side to taxing large companies, ones that literally don't pay tax here because they're, in another country, but we use it here and we pay a fortune for it. So if you look at our welfare system and if you look at NDIS, you look at things like that, that is there to help the most vulnerable. That is there for those who genuinely need it, right? But the problem has become is that it is actually become a career for a lot of people. So I've worked in that sector. I help people all the time. I work with migrants. I work with all different women on trying to get work and education and so forth. But then you'll come up with people that have the attitude of, you should just be giving me money because I'm alive and you should be giving me housing because I exist, when you actually are able-bodied and you can go and work. And you should absolutely go and get a job, do the crappy jobs that we've all had to do and earn a living, because the welfare system are for the people who can't. Ones coming out of domestic violence, the single mums that have been abandoned, and even with them, they're trapped with the single mum pension. They need to be incentivized and assisted to get an education, because a lot of them that I talk to want to work. So we need to be looking at how can we actually make sure we're not just throwing money to people that don't feel like working because they hate the world and hate the government, which I understand, but actually say, no, let's make sure there's no fraud. Let's make sure that people are incentivized, got aspiration, and they can do it. Because it's really hard to say to someone, get out of this whole work really hard, but we'll tax you 50% of that once you've made it. So that's why it's hard to get people, convince them to do that. But we need to there's so much money wasted in that space. And I've always said to all governments, we need to audit the NFP sector. The amount of money that goes from government, I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars to employment service providers, the NFP sector, that is wasted. And there's no KPIs. They literally just keep people on the books. There's no incentive to get them into work. That needs to change. I reckon that is a massive black hole.
Yeah, I'd agree. So the latest stats are about 1.4 million Australians sit in that welfare discussion point that you've just pointed out, right? Then if you add in the aged care pension as well, it takes it up to just on 3 million. The cost
and the thing is, I love the aged care pension, but I also think they should incentivize that those who want to earn some extra money, they might want to do some babysitting and earn some money, which would help young families, or they might want to help at a cafe. They should be able to earn, an extra $20,000 a year tax-free to be able to do that to help with their retirement. So we've just got it completely out of whack. With it's kind of like
it's legacy, right? Like this is the catch.
That's right.
It's a program that's been set up in the 80s and the 90s. It's not been changed for.
No one's brave enough to change it. No one's brave enough to change it. No one is brave enough to say, we want to help those who need the help, and everyone else, You will assist you, will encourage you. So, for example, education, I believe that education should be free. I don't like the fact that people have to pay for university. So it should be, if you finish your degree, you get a job, we should be paying you back that money to incentivize it. So I just don't like this whole, you've got to go into debt to try and make it in life so we can tax you even more. And you want to know why people are hopeless. So the attitude, the system, there's a lot of things that need to change, but no one's brave enough to do that.
That's a topic for another day, because there's more to it than that with regards to the education, because universities have gone from being universities to a business, right?
So they're absolutely a business, and the immigration policy is a lead generation tool for that. And I'm dealing with the people that get the degrees and then say to me, I was told I'll get a job. I can't get a job.
Correct.
So that's another issue.
Yeah. And not only that, I was told that the job I would get would be significantly higher than those that don't have education. That's also broken down. Then the final part of it is, I'm walking out, getting a graduate job, maybe high 5 figures, which is, quite reasonable, above the median wage, hit 6 figures. And all of a sudden, as you've already pointed out, your majority of that is eaten up by tax. So why bother? So the incentive is the question here. And when you and I were recording this, we're a week away from the budget. There is rumors that they're going to be giving a $200 to $300 inverted commas income offset once off. More stimulus, more. It is not reform. It's just basically a handout. My question is that incentive. What other mechanisms can we do with incentive? Because the next part of the discussion that I want to get to, because I know this is also a passion of yours, is also what they're also coming up against is technology. So AI is the next part of this. The discussion around, particularly grad jobs, lower education / low experienced jobs are getting eaten by AI. Yeah. Where do we sit with that in terms of how we can deal with the fact that, again, the incentive is falling like a stone, education is not getting you ahead, and that initial job is being taken by a bot?
Well, the first part with the cash incentive, which I believe is not means tested, which blows my mind.
Insane, right?
Especially from the Labor Party. Hello, working class, they should be in uproar right now over this. So it's like, hey,
do you want to point this out? So we
not confirmed.
Not confirmed.
It better be from this outrage. It better be.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, I pay heaps of tax. I want it to go to the most vulnerable, right? But I also don't like the idea of, hey, here's some cash. Good luck for the rest of the year, right? So it's not helping them. Even in that instance, I would rather a voucher that people then can use for a small business. Right. So it's actually directing the money in some capacity to help another sector in the economy go to the small business. It could be $50 to, eat at a small business, not the big venues, not the big hospitality venues, the small to medium venues. Hems has got enough money. So we want them to go to the local cafe and to incentivize that way. When it comes to technology, I've been watching over a very long time. Both Liberals did this as well. The narrative was, we want higher paying, higher qualified jobs, so higher education. So they've been pushing, especially in Western Sydney, we want high, people be educated, getting high paid jobs. So they're creating a 2-tiered society. Just do that narrative. What they're saying is, unless you've got a degree and you're in a high paying job, the rest of you kind of trash. Too bad. We got rid of manufacturing a very long time ago, which wiped out essentially a lot of the working class. So now people are in panic mode, rightfully so. It's like, well, hang on a minute, where's my security of my job if AI is going to take my job? And then say, well, you'll have to get a degree. Well, hang on a minute, do I need a degree to be able to get a well-paying job? I could actually just learn tech myself and get that job. So they're trying to get people through the university system. And right, if you want to, I'm on my 4th degree, so I'm not against it. I do appreciate it. But it's the fear mongering that I don't like. I think there needs to be more communication, more assistance, more practical tips for people to understand AI, but at the same time, not bow down to it. I don't like the government using it or signing up these big contracts with AI, companies, huge AI companies, but without telling us what it's for, without telling us the impact it's going to have on us. So I don't mind them using it in their employment, in their workplace, or so great. But how about the individual? Have you communicated with them that they're going to get a job, or are you upskilling them to make sure that they keep their job? Because people are not only sending jobs offshore quietly, that we're not hearing in the news that I know about, but we're also seeing people saying, oh, we've just got rid of 3,000 jobs, middle level jobs because of AI. So
yeah, so I want to pick
that
up on that.
communication.
This has been the fascinating thing about the debate of it and about how it's sold is how I've always described it, which is it's sold on this idea of an efficiency, but it's also sold on the concept of productivity. So if it's productivity, firing people is the worst thing you should be doing. Because if it's making your system, your institution, your business more productive, it's therefore creating more output. So you're going to have to need more people to deal with the output it creates. So I'm not going to say it on this, but I've said it publicly before. You know, there's a couple of big banks that have gone down this route, have found that once they trained the AI and did the AI, flicked the people because they thought that it was efficient rather than productive, the amount of work it created meant they had to hire them all back and some more. So this is, I think, also, I agree with your point that it's being marketed, I think is the correct term, incorrectly. So this is the leadership issue. CEOs and particularly CFOs see it as an efficiency to therefore cut costs. Whereas what it actually probably is a production increaser. Therefore, the service or good you're producing increases, and therefore the amount of people you're going to need with that increased productivity is either the same as what you had before or actually more.
Yeah.
That's the leadership question again, right? Which is, are we once again going down what I get really angry about is the drive to efficiency is absolutely overriding the drive to explore and to actually make ourselves more productive and therefore producing more things.
Yeah, because that's called greed. And it's kind of led by shareholders. And this, you know, you talk to anyone, CEO of a big company, they'll always say shareholders first. It's all about the shareholders and the shareholder value. That's their job. That is why they get their bonuses. So we've lost that connection to the individual. The employees are people, you know, and innovation is good, and we should be encouraging that. But it's also, don't forget, I've spoken to a lot of companies, mid-sized companies, they're petrified of AI as well. So I think a lot of people jump on the bandwagon too quickly, like you said, and they get rid of all these people thinking AI is going to fix it. No, you've got 10, 20 years of perfecting it, like any tool or any new system, to see if it works. And then some are avoiding it completely, which is also dangerous, because, you know, you need to, the reality is how much you love it or hate it, you have to accept it in some capacity. But I think we're going to end up in a society, and this hurts women more so, and also diverse people. We're going to have the 1% at the top that know AI. They know it so well. They build it, they run with it, they do all of that, and everyone else is just running behind. They're trying to play catch up. They don't quite understand it. What do I do? How do I understand? You know, and women. So AI, obviously, you know, it's collecting content, historical content, you know, out in the world, on the web, and it's putting together answers. And what will happen is, because historically, say with finance, it's male dominated and skewed towards men because more men would get loans and use finance. So what's being produced is actually disadvantaging women, which means you need humans to come in and make sure that the information or what needs to change, you need to use AI for good, which requires humans to do that. So actually we need more people to set it up properly, to make sure the information it's pulling, you know, garbage in, garbage out. We need to make sure it's the right information, or it's going to hurt everyone. And we're going to end up in this world where it's going to be the top echelon only that understand it, make money off it, like the private equity firms, similar type thing. And everyone else, good luck.
Yeah. And that, again, is that large language model is a collator, not an actual thinker. And I think that's the other question that comes with it, is that people hear the word intelligence and believe that therefore has actual decision-making and inferred meaning. It doesn't do that. And we know that very, very clearly. And it's unlikely to do that anytime soon. The other part about technology that's also becoming quite clear with where it sits is the consumption of energy, the consumption of thought process, and the consumption of a capital that we haven't talked about, which is making energy as cost efficient as possible. Australia at the moment is not doing that very well. We have now been exposed to what's going on in the energy cycle with regards to crude. How do we deal with the other part of this discussion, which is that technology is going to be part of our future, but the one thing we haven't addressed properly from a leadership perspective and from a political perspective is the energy needed to actually create it. Where do you sit on that? Because I know you've got some pretty strong opinions on energy.
Well, the problem with the energy discussion is tribal. It is a perfect example of tribalism, right? So you're either pro gas, pro coal, or you're pro renewables. That's it, right? No one's in between. No one's having a discussion to say, well, hang on a minute. So, the global movement is to demonize coal and gas. It is ruining the world when actually, to be honest, a lot of the large companies are ruining the oceans that we're not even seeing right now with dumping rubbish and killing off animals. But still, so it's ruining the world. So everyone's like, oh my gosh, I need my children to be protected. So we'll go renewables. We're pro renewables. But what they didn't tell you is how expensive that would be, and that we've used taxpayer money to subsidize the large companies to be able to make sure the renewables are being built. But then they're not built in Australia. They're not manufactured here. It's overseas that's getting the money. So we're spending our money on overseas manufacturing brought in, and then the communities are impacted and they're not being communicated with. Both the two major parties in Australia have their allegiances to different groups, to different energy companies. No one has stopped and said, you know what, here is a sensible 10-year plan to make sure that we're utilising our natural resources, and at the same time, we'll transition into more renewable type of energy, but we'll make sure that the money stays here. We bring back manufacturing here for our wind farms, but we're also not destroying the farming community, so much so where they actually have to take the wind farms because they can't earn money any other way because they've been taxed out of farming, which is where we get our food. So it all comes down to money, right? Everyone is like, this lobby group represents that company. We'll pay you. We'll, invest in you to be reelected. We want you to make sure we get these tenders, we get this. No one's actually, and I'll tell you now, there is not a single politician that I know that genuinely believes we have an issue with our energy. They just think this is where we need to, this is our loyalties are here, so we're going to push this. And the other groups like, this is where our loyalties lie. This is where we need to push. It's the grassroots community that are going, hang on a minute, what's going on? Who's telling us the truth? No one is. So if someone wants to come out and speak the truth and talk about a nice, fair, energy plan, that'd be great. But when then AI comes along and says, hey, our data centers are going to use up all your water and use up all your energy, no one heard about that till recently. No one's talked about that. So the government, the politicians don't like to talk about that. Again, where's your transparency? Say to them, yes, they're going to use it up, but they have to pay, not your taxpayer money to subsidize it, but they have to pay to make sure it's a different energy grid. It's solar and it's specific for that. So these are the discussions aren't being had. You're just told that if you don't support it, you're not progressive or you're a bigot or whatever it is. They use names to attack. So this is where you mentioned before about a leader. They can make the hard decisions and come out. This is where we need someone to come out and say, actually, this is the state of what's happening with the energy sector. This is what we need to do.
And unfortunately, I would argue straight away what you said before, we don't have that person.
No.
We don't have...
And I'm too busy to do that, so...
because I look at it from a slightly different angle, obviously, which is the interesting economics of it is that the most efficient way is the diversification, right? So it's both. But it's not just both, it's also about using new age technologies that are coming. So, unfortunately, I feel at the moment more prominent facing people have sort of slightly trashed the view of hydrogen. Whereas actually, if you look at where the real intelligence in hydrogen energy is coming from, they've actually got it to work. And they've not only is it going to work, they've got it to a way that it can transport it. There is a reason why Singapore, Japan, Oman, for instance, have just invested incredible sums of money from their sovereign wealth funds into hydrogen in this country, but we don't talk about it. South Korea is the other one I highlight, which is they are the ones that you need to use as a sort of a beacon because they're diversification. They have nuclear, they have gas, they have renewables, they have hydrogen. The one they're going to get rid of is coal because it's actually now becoming the more expensive version for them rather than the others. So this is that leadership question of going, actually, let's look at other players rather than looking at ourselves and going, this is what they're doing, this is why it's working for them. The leadership is then, let's watch their model and use it this way. We're a conservative country. We've got to point that out. We are very conservative. We follow. We don't necessarily lead. That's fine. But if we're going to be followers, we need to therefore take the best options and go forward. I know I've sort of rambled there and I haven't asked you a question because I've just realized running out of time.
It's true.
I know, right? So, and that's again, that's the frustration that you and I can sit here and talk about, and we do this in the media and what have you, but all of the discussion point we've just had over the last half an hour gets in the way of having a rational, reasonable, understandable debate that actually would lead to the better of all because of tribalism. But I do have to ask you the question I ask everyone, which is, Amanda Rose, if you were in charge for just one day, what would you do?
Of the world?
You can choose whatever thing you're in charge of as you see fit.
If I was in charge of the world for just one day, I would tell everyone about Jesus. I would say that you're distressed, the world is crap, and you don't know and you feel hopeless. I would tell them all about Jesus. If I had one day, that's what I'd do, and then I'd mic drop and walk out.
Fair enough. So religion is your thing that you think.
My faith. I'm not religious, but my faith. So, that's my core, my stability, and I would be disingenuous if I didn't share what keeps me stable with others.
Mm-hmm. Perfect way to end what has been an incredible exchange. Amanda Rose, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Big thank you to Amanda. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. What a topic, what a discussion. As you can see, she's got some very strong views and she sticks to them. That's what her whole principle is about having the ethics, the principles, and the value to hold to your beliefs and going from there. It really, really does shine through, and it's why she is so sought after. As always, to you out there, thank you so much for watching, listening, and everything in between. It's an absolute pleasure to bring exchanges to you. Don't forget, if you haven't, please subscribe to wherever that you're getting this. The more subscribers we get, the more and more we can continue to grow this program. It is going so incredibly well. We're so grateful. But please, if you haven't, hit the subscribe button. If you've got any questions, ideas, guests that you want me to get on, don't forget we've got an email. It's exchanges@evanlucas.com.au. But until next week, thank you again for joining. We'll speak to you then.